Hi folks! Let's get started with this week's lab by logging into RStudio Cloud. So you can go to rstudio.cloud and click login, or there are some links on Canvas. And once you log in, you should be brought to your workspace, and then you should be able to find the workspace for our class in the sidebar. You probably only have one of these things. So you click on the link to the space for our class. And now it's fine to close this sidebar here. So there's a little X icon, and that'll just give you more room to do your work on RStudio Cloud. And then it's fine to click on either the link for your labs or click continue on the one from me. Either way should jump you to the same place. And we'll wait for RStudio to resume our project. Okay, it seems like we're getting there. And it popped it open. Great. So I've got some things open from last week, so I'm just going to clean things up in RStudio. First, over here in the environment, I'm going to click the broom icon, which is going to clear all the objects from my workspace. So if I click that button, it'll ask me if I'm sure I want to remove all objects. Yes, I'm sure. It turns out that RStudio keeps track of all the code you've ever typed in your history, and so if you're worried about something, you can always get it back. My other recommendation is to write the code into your ARM Markdown document. That's this document here, so you can keep track of it. And then I'm going to close the things that I have open here. I could click the X's, or I often go to File, Close All, and that closes everything up. Okay. And then we need to find the pre-lab for this week. So right now I'm in the labs folder. I'm going to jump back up to the main project folder and then click on pre-labs. And the pre-lab for this week is about sampling. So I'm going to click on that pre-lab and it will open it up in this pane here. So see if you can remember how to load the Mosaic package. There's a line of comment here that we can delete, and then we're going to write our code in there. So see if you can remember how to write that code. Okay, so I use the library function, library, and then I write parentheses. And inside those parentheses, I put the name of the package. So in this case, it's Mosaic. And R will start helping you. If you want, you can hit tab and it'll complete the name of the package. And then I'll click the play button. And it looks like nothing printed out this time. I probably already had that loaded in, but it's just good practice to do it every time so that you never get stuck in a weird place. And it's possible that you already have my example data set loaded in your environment. I just cleaned mine up, so I need to load everything in again. And there's a line of code on line 21. Again, I've got a comment. This is where the data loading code goes, and I'm going to write my data loading code. Again, see if you can take a second and remember how to load in data in R. Okay, I'm gonna try it. So I'm gonna name my data GSS, capital GSS, short for General Social Survey. And then I'm gonna type that assignment operator. That's the less than and the hyphen. I'm gonna put a space there. And then I'm gonna use the read.csv function to read in my data. Once I've written the name of the function, I need parentheses. And then inside those parentheses, I need quotation marks. So like last week, if you're really good at typing out file paths, you could type out that file path. To me, it's easier if I just hit the tab key and then it shows me the files that I have in this folder, and I can scroll down with my arrow key to data and hit tab, and then it shows me the things that are in that folder. There's only one file, it's gssclean.csv, so I can hit tab again. But if you're good at writing out the file path, you could just type it out, data/gss_clean.csv. Either way, to run the code, you're going to click the green play button. And then you'll see it pop up in your environment. And it says 2,348 obs of 45 variables. If you want to see the spreadsheet-like preview, just click in that area where it says, 2,300 observations, and then it'll pop up the preview. And I think this lab asks you to take a screenshot of the data again. So that would be something like this. Not the GSS data, but the real data for the lab. All right. So remember how this data set came to be. It is a random sample of households from the United States. It's a survey that's been run by NORC at the University of Chicago since 1972, and it has all sorts of demographic questions and questions about people's opinions about different things. So last week, we mostly looked at things in RStudio. So we clicked around and we figured out how many observations we had. We thought about data types like categorical and quantitative variables. This week, we're just thinking about data, but it's a little bit more abstract. So let's see. The first question is, how many variables are there in this data set? And that's one that I can answer using RStudio. And I can see that written here. It says 45 variables. So there are 45 variables. Then my second question is this a sample? And that's not something that R can tell you. That's something you have to think about. So you read about the context of the data. This was a random sample of households from the United States. And then you think, is it a sample? Yeah, it is. Yes, it is a random sample of Americans. Great. Then we can scroll down. If so, we could describe the sample and the population. So the sample is a random sample of Americans. The population is all Americans. So the population is always going to be bigger than the sample. The sample should be like a little mini version of the population. And so in this case, we're interested in knowing something about everyone in the United States, but we're just going to take a random sample. What kind of sample is it? Okay, I've already written this. It's a random sample. And we're just going to assume that it's a simple random sample because I didn't give you more information than that. Most of the samples that we see in this class are simple random samples. I think there's a few other types of samples that you might have learned about in lecture. Does this data come from an experiment or an observational study? Again, that's something that you have to think about and make an assessment on your own. And in this case, I think it's an observational study. So it's an observational study because there was no manipulation of the environment. We just asked people their opinions. So if it was an experiment, we would have had to do something different for one group and another, and we didn't. We just sampled a bunch of Americans and asked them a bunch of questions. Can we generalize from this data to a larger population? Again, this is a thinking question. And the cases when you can generalize are when you have a sample of your population. So sometimes you don't have a random sample, you just have a convenient sample, and it wouldn't make sense to generalize to a larger population. So for example, if I was interested in something about all St. Thomas students, and I took as my quote-unquote sample the people in Stat 220, that wouldn't be a representative sample because not everyone takes Stat 220, and the majors that require Stat 220 are different than the majors that don't. And so we wouldn't want to generalize to everyone at St. Thomas. If the registrar gave me a list of random people from St. Thomas and I was able to ask them questions, then maybe I could generalize to that larger population. So in this case, can we generalize? Yes, because we have a true sample of the population. Great. Can we use these data to determine cause and effect relationships? Again, this is a thinking question where you have to think about your data and see if you can determine cause and effect. And you should have learned in your lecture the requirements to determine cause and effect. But to me, the gold standard for determining cause and effect is an experiment. So if you have an experiment where you are controlling the environment, then you can say that there's some cause and effect. But if you have an observational study, then you can't say cause and effect. So no, because this is simply an observational study. So we might be able to observe relationships, but we can't say that they have cause and effect. So I'm going to save my work here in my pre-lab. As usual, you don't need to turn in the pre-lab. This is just for you to work through and practice the skills that you need for the real lab. And the real lab is in the project folder under labs, and it's called Lab 2 Sampling. So you could open that up and try it out, and you can ask me questions during our synchronous time.